I'm joined today by the co-creator, showrunner, and executive producer of Homeland, Mr. Alex Ganes, and by the star and executive producer of Homeland, Ms. Claire Danes. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us today digitally. Before we talk about this eighth and final season, we have a clip that we're going to show everyone to kind of set things up a little bit and set what is usually and always the high stakes of Homeland a little higher today. So let's take a look.
You lied about your interaction with Yevgeny Gromov. Let's start there. You had a relationship complicated enough to lie about. Also, he saved your life. You don't think you carry some sense of obligation?
I get that there are risks.
You couldn't possibly. You told him things you never told me. You told him you think you've been a danger to Franny. Is that true? Because, my God, if it is, you are vulnerable to him in ways neither of us can imagine.
I'm still putting the pieces together. You know, I'm not trying to be evasive. I don't remember everything.
Which is why you've been in a recovery facility. And why you are going back.
No. Max is still out there.
You understand what'll happen if you stay here? I just talked Mike Dunn out of sharing all of this with the FBI.
Jesus Christ, there's nothing to tell. Let him talk.
You told President Warner he should come to Afghanistan.
I didn't know Warner was gonna take me up on it. I had no idea until I showed up at Bagram and Air Force One was on the fucking tarmac.
There was a full hour between then and the helicopters going down. Enough time to make a phone call.
To my Russian handler?
Who informs the Taliban. Then an RPG hits the President of the United States.
Do you believe that?
No. But the FBI most certainly will. And you will become the focus of an investigation that will define the rest of your life.
I don't care. I'm not leaving Max. I won't.
I think you're the only one who gives a shit. Max is on everyone's mind. We will do everything we can to find him.
Okay, well, that means keeping me here because Yevgeny has a lead on him. He just sent word. I reached out to him this morning. Everyone in the station was told to shake their contacts for intel. That is what I did. The Russians have relationships with Taliban commanders on the border.
Tell me you didn't.
He says he has a lead. Can I call him back, please?
Carrie, think for a minute. What would you do if you were trying to recruit him and he came to you desperate?
No, that...
You would do exactly this. You would tell him exactly what he wanted to hear.
So you are gonna blow off this lead?
I will have the CIA pursue it. In 30 minutes, you will be escorted to a plane. You will go willingly or in handcuffs.
Claire, one of the things that's been a huge part, if not the core of Homeland in many ways, is the relationship between Carrie and Saul, between you and Mandy. And it's evolved in many ways, taken many twists and turns. As you guys worked on this final season together, how did that relationship in the years that you guys have been working together, how did it take into play here?
It was an enormous gift when we first started, just the innate natural chemistry that Mandy and I had. But it only developed and became richer over time. And that is the great privilege of doing a television show for a long time. That you reap those benefits. Carrie and Saul are in conflict a lot, but they are especially so in this final season. it also just became clear over the years that that was really the central relationship, and it had to be tested as we reached our climax.
And there's so many twists and turns in these final 12 episodes, that just ended in April. What is there about that character that most resonates with you?
There's so much tension within her. There's such great paradox at play always, that she is, so unreliable and vulnerable and transgressive and also happens to have a very sound moral compass, and is tends to be right. But yeah, it's her kind of myopic vision of what she must do in order to fulfill her calling and keep the world safe. And then there's this like churning, kind of intensely disorganized nervous system underneath all of that. So it's just a very exciting combination of qualities.
Alex, to quote Claire there, exciting combination of qualities. You guys have had a remarkable run over these 8 seasons. And one of the things about Homeland is it has been, by the very nature of the show and then the times we live in, often ahead of real life events or mirroring real life events. You have done over the years trips to Washington. You talk to people inside the intelligence community, inside the political community. How have those, now looking back over all the seasons, how do you think they truly benefited the show? And what do you think, if you could tell us, what was the one thing you were told or the one piece of advice you got that really had the most effect on Homeland?
Well, as you remember, at the end of season 3, we dispatched with the character of Nicholas Brody, and we were in the real difficult position of trying to reinvent the show at that time. And that's when our trips to DC really came to the fore. That's when they became so influential, and influential in a way that is really hard to overstate. We would go into those week-long sessions in DC not really knowing where the season was going to be shot, what the story was going to be, and we allowed the free-form nature of that time in DC to really influence our storytelling. For example, Claire will tell you this: that season 4 trip to Washington, D.C., we asked every single intelligence officer who came into that room, where would you like to be stationed right now? And every single one of them said Pakistan. So we shut the show in Pakistan. And it was, you just can't overstate how valuable it was. So people always said, oh, the show is being so prescient, the show is being so, do you have a crystal ball? And the truth is, we were hearing all those stories from these incredibly committed people who were there on the ground, who knew what was happening before the public did. So we were far less fortune tellers than just reporters of what we'd heard and experienced.
Series finales are very, very hard. So for you guys, did this finale for you, now with some time to look back at it, did this fulfill the promise and where you wanted Homeland to end?
Yeah, it did for me. I mean, I was really happy with the shape of the final season, which is really primarily, if not entirely, Alex's doing. I thought it was, really smart to have Carrie so directly aligned with Brody in this final season. For her to be, unsure herself if she's a traitor or not. We never wanted to venture into sentimentality or, glibness. But at the same time, we've asked so much of our characters and our audience. I mean, everybody gets so bludgeoned. And there was something subversive for us on ending, with Carrie smiling. She's sacrificed an enormous amount and she's in a version of hell, but her spirit is intact and she's still at it. She's still working. And she has therefore, if not won, not been defeated.
The architecture of the season, as Claire, every time I hear Claire talk, I think if she weren't such a brilliant actress, she would be an incredible writer. But the architecture of the season was to put Carrie in Brody's shoes. And the fans that have stuck with us all these years knew in their hearts what Brody's fate ultimately was. So I think that there was an expectation, people watching the season and how grim it was in places, that was going to be Carrie's fate at the end. That's where we zigged right instead of left. And though Carrie has a smile on her face, she's left a lot of damage behind her too. So she's where she belongs. That's ultimately what we thought. And that's what Claire and I talked about all the time. She's where she belongs. She's in a duplicitous relationship with Yevgeny Gromov. She is spying for America, but she's also doing exactly what she was born to do.
There is inevitable disappointment just because it's going to be over, and there's going to be resistance to that and resentment of that, by everyone, us included.
I thank you guys so much for joining us today on this. And you guys both know I've always been a huge fan of the show from year one. It's beautiful to see a series end in such a way, and end in a way that, as you said, Alex, you really nicely mirror where you guys were in season one. So thank you, Claire. Thank you, Alex, for joining us today.